many moons ago when Gloria, my wife, was first pregnant, she had, as you do with first pregnancies, you're nervous about everything. You're reading all the books, you're listening to all the things, you're watching all the shows. Oh, God, what am I doing wrong? All that sort of stuff. And one of the things that she incorporated into her pregnancy was at night, as she would fall asleep, she would listen to these kind of positivity meditations of like, everything's going to be okay, basically. And so, but I got to paint this image for you because she, being pregnant, would fall asleep like a rock and be out within 2 seconds, right? Yeah. Meanwhile, Johnny reads on his phone and anxiety over here is still up till 3 a.m. So she would start this meditation, this guided meditation, and it was always this calming grandmotherly voice that would go, and you're relaxed, and the baby is welcomed into the world. Kindness, and open your heart to the presence of new love in your life. And right when this thing first started, it's the biggest eye roll in the world for me. I'm like, oh God, welcome the baby. All right, here we go. But what would happen was every night for 9 months, Gloria would fall asleep within 10 hot seconds, but she would have set this meditation thing on her side of the bed. Yeah. And so I couldn't very well reach over my pregnant wife to shut this off because it would wake her up. So I would just have to sit there and listen to an hour of, it's basically this old woman talking to me, Dave Kellett, in my 30s going, David, open your womb and welcome the baby. The baby loves you and is excited to meet you. All the changes in your body, and I'm just staring at the ceiling, listening to this, going,
just vibrating with anger. And the next morning you wake up, you're all groggy, and Gloria's waking up just happy as can be. Hey, honey, did you sleep well? And Dave goes, I think I slept okay, but I'm lactating.
Well, so here's the great twist on the entire story, right? So 9 months I'm doing this where she's like, okay, let's start the meditation CD, and we're welcoming the baby. Oh, she's asleep immediately. Then me listening to it, right? But then the sweet, beautiful baby's born. Yeah. And like this third night of the baby being around, I'm like, hey, could we pop on the meditation CD? I kind of miss it.
Well, yeah, because after that first baby is born, you need somebody to tell you it's going to be okay.
I needed that older grandmotherly woman to be going, your life is not a dumpster fire and lack of sleep. You are not constantly changing diapers and sleeping for 10-minute increments.
Oh, my God.
Everything will be okay.
Oh, my God. That first baby, I remember when we brought Alex home. First of all, my wife had read a bunch of these books about, you got to, make your parenting unit. Nobody comes into the house. It's just us. And that's what we did. And we were over. It was like a hostage situation. The entire first 24 to 36 hours, we never left the second floor. I ran downstairs furtively for some cut up fruit that we had. I remember feeding my wife kiwi slices as she tried to figure out breastfeeding, which is much more difficult than it looks.
Yeah, that latching, that's not a simple thing. I remember the nurse trying to, and it's like, oh, this is more complicated than I thought it would be.
Yeah, exactly. And then, after the first 36 hours, I still remember, and this is emblazoned in my mind, the day after, we finally ventured downstairs to put Alex into a little, crib, sleeper type thing we had on the first floor, and he was asleep. And I looked at my wife looked at me, and I said, Chinese? She said, oh my God, yes. And we ordered Chinese takeout. It arrived. We turned on the TV, watched something completely brainless, like, the daytime TV. And we watched a daytime TV show, ate takeout Chinese, and both of us almost with tears in our eyes because he slept through the whole thing. And that's when we realized that we were going to be okay. But up until then, it was touch and go, baby. But when we sat there with Chinese takeout, it was like, yep, okay, we're going to make this. Yeah, it's going to be okay.
It's a little like silver lining of like a light coming through at the end of the Muppet movie, The Clouds. And you're like, we can do this. This is all right. Yeah. I remember walking outside for the first time to go, like, I was like, I'm going to go treat myself to a coffee. This was like a week after the baby was born. And another human talked to me, and I was like, yes, hello. Hi, I'm here. I am also alive and moving in the outside world. Hello. Well, sir, I just asked you if you wanted a large latte.
I just said vente or
I
mocha.
would. Can I touch you? Can I just touch your hand? I just need
Sir, I need you to get over to the other side of the counter.
I just need a hug. I need a hug so
on
bad.
the other side of the counter, sir. I have a baseball bat back here, and I'll take it. I'll take it. Just any kind of touch.
Robert, I'm assuming your name is Robert. I haven't slept in a week, Robert. I just need the touch of another human to tell me it's all going to be okay.
And if you could do it in a grandmotherly tone, it would help. I can't find that fucking tape nowhere.
Well, on that grandmotherly tone, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making comics.
And the show about making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, and everything's going to be okay over at webcomics.com, and things are going to be even better over at Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, and we're welcoming in the new presence of Drive and Sheldon and the co-director of Stripped.
And this week's hour of comics advice is made possible by your friends and neighbors over at patreon.com/comiclab. So, Dave, let's talk comics.
Wouldn't it be funny if I'm just asleep by the end of that? Like we've triggered the most Pavlovian memory, and I'm just from years ago. I'm out like a light,
just drooling on your microphone.
Yeah.
In other words, another Tuesday.
Well, Brad, let's talk comics. Let's dive right into it. I have got a great question for you. This comes in from our friend Shane Tucker, and it says, Dave and Brad, this is such an awesome podcast. Oh, well, hold on. This is praise at the beginning. We should have cut this out.
I need to hear that. Go ahead. Slow down.
Right.
Slow down.
Slow down. Say it like you mean it. Oh, all right. Hey guys, this is such an awesome podcast. I'm a lifelong fan of comic strips and trying to start to get into cartooning seriously after 44 years of doodling. My question is, given the immense catalog of strips, what is the best way to ensure you do not inadvertently plagiarize other works? I have dabbled in t-shirt designs before that later I found out closely resembled other designs I've never seen prior, even after researching. Do you guys ever find you have accidentally mirrored another gag or topic from another strip? Thanks, and keep up the great work. Brad Geiger, I have to ask you, inadvertent plagiarism, I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I want to hear what Brad Geiger has to say first. Brad, you're a plagiarist. Go.
You're only saying that because you read it someplace else.
Touche. Good turn of phrase. All right. No, so seriously, inadvertent plagiarism, how much do you worry about it or don't worry about it, and what do you do about it?
Well, we should probably tell this nice cartoonist that there is there's an accepted cartoonist language, a syntax, if you will, that you use when this happens, if it happens, and it's a syntax that it's good to know how to use as a cartoonist. These are the words that you use, and this is how you get solve this situation.
Okay.
Here you go. Oops, sorry about that. The end. Because I'm telling you, it happens to all of us. And all you do is if you find out that you now remember, it's inadvertent plagiarism. You know, if you've stolen from Berkeley Breathed line for line like I used to do in the late 90s, that's another thing altogether. But if it's honest inadvertent plagiarism, you go, oops, sorry about that. And if you want, throw in a little, here's another one for you. Great minds think alike, and go on with your day, because anybody who's been doing this for a day knows that these things happen. A lot of times you hit upon the same ideas, the same constructions. There are very similar formations of different gags that are going to happen. And anybody that's been around for a little while not only knows that it happens, but probably can identify once or twice when it happened in their own careers or in their own lives, and nobody takes it that seriously, especially when it's pretty obvious that it's an honest mistake. And I think the more you get upset about it, the more it looks kind of fishy. But if you go in and say, geez, that, you know what, that's amazing. Great minds think alike. And it's so interesting how you approached it and how I approached it. If you take it just as a matter of fact thing, I have yet to see somebody really get upset over something like that. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, first of all, let's talk about it when it comes towards us, because I think this is helpful. It's a helpful way to describe the mood that you should adopt with this, because Brad has helpfully pointed out in the past that ideas are cheap. It's the execution that matters, right?
Yeah.
So when another cartoonist comes to me, like let's say Brad, I didn't know Brad, but he tweets at me and he goes, Dave, it just got pointed out to me that this strip, link, is similar to the one that you did a few years back, link.
Yep.
This was completely unintentional, and I'm so sorry. Would you like me to take it down? I always respond, A, with kindness, B, with understanding, and C, you don't need to do anything about it,
Right.
Because if they are big enough that they are coming to me, 1,000% it wasn't intentional, right? Like that's an immediate sign that like, oh boy, I'm embarrassed that this even looks like it's inappropriate. I did not steal this idea from you. But to Brad's idea that ideas are cheap, we're all living in a shared zeitgeist, a moment, a cultural moment, right? And we all have on any given day 1,000, say, cultural inputs that we were either getting from Reddit, from the New York Times, from NPR, from the comics that we read, from Saga or X-Men or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And let me broaden that out. There's 10,000 of them, 100,000 of them now, but there's 1,000 main ones, right? A lot of those ideas, once they get into your brain, and if they hit 1 million brains, 100 of who had a similar life, 10 of whom are creative people, well, then you might actually get 10 very similar ideas produced that very same day. And so I always respond to another cartoonist that comes to me with like, it's no problem. Great minds think alike. Keep doing what you're doing, and I'm so happy that we both found the great idea, right? Or something like that. Basically, respond with kindness and humility, because I have been on the other end of this, and I still remember it clearly because it was the first time it ever happened to me, where someone pointed out to me, hey, this Sheldon is remarkably similar to this Diesel Sweeties Rich Stevens comic. And for those of you that don't know, Rich has also been doing web comics for the better part of 20 years. I mean, he's an amazing output over at Diesel Sweeties. Anyway, Rich, who I did not know at the time, I don't even know, Brad, if I read it, but I had to admit that maybe I had read it and it had like filtered into my subconscious because Brad, this sucker was word for word identical.
It was a beat for beat.
It was a beat for beat joke construction. And all I could do to say was, Rich, we've never met. I'm so sorry. In this case, I actually felt bad enough that I took it down, even though I probably didn't need to. But I think Rich, to his benefit was, or to his credit, was like, hey, no big deal. Let's just let's keep going, keep on keeping on, whatever it was. I remember being on that end of it though, where it's like this flop sweat panic attack of no, I didn't steal the idea. I swear it came independently. But so all you can do is be kind about it because it's going to happen. And Brad, if you'll forgive me, can I tell another story from my time? So I briefly worked at the San Diego Union-Tribune, which I think is still a going concern. I think it still exists. It was a newspaper in San Diego, and it 7 days a week, good-sized newspaper, the major one in the metropolitan area. And they allowed me to do 2 editorial cartoons a week. I got Monday and I got Saturday, right? Any of the days that Steve Kelly didn't want to do, I got to do. But one of my jobs as like junior cartoonist with my tie on and my awkwardly fitting shirt was to go over to literally the fax machine and get the day's syndicated comics that were coming off the fax machine and bring them to the head editor of the editorial page, right? And then if they picked one, they would then request it somehow digitally. This was like very early email, but like you would get the fax, you would review them. Anyway.
So they wouldn't print the fax, because the first thing I'm thinking is the print quality had to have been horrible. But then they must have.
Because as anybody that knows, a fax I think is below 72 DPI. I think it's like 48 DPI or something. It's terrible. Anyway, we wouldn't print the fax, but it was enough to review them, if that makes sense, Brad. Anyway, long story short. So I would spend the first hour every morning like collating and picking up off the floor all the 100 comics that have been faxed in overnight. And the amazing thing, as a young cartoonist, I would look at this, and the one from Cincinnati was the same one as the one from Miami, was the same one as the one from Toronto and Michigan, because all these cartoonists had been given the same 50 prompts the night before in the news, and they all filtered it through the same comedy filters that we all had growing up in the 20th century. And remarkably, Brad, 2 times out of 10, it would be the identical exact same joke. So I saw in my own existence that, what a weird way to say that. I saw by my own experience that like really professional cartoonists who were thousands of miles away from each other were producing identical comics off the same inputs. You know, Brad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's not surprising at all. I mean, let's face it. I think your point about the shared zeitgeist is exactly right, and maybe now more than ever. I mean, we really do share an awful lot of the same kind of ideas and pop culture references. So it's not surprising that this is going to happen. And the bottom line is, you know what? It's like anything else. If you've made a mistake, or if you're in a situation where maybe this is like not even a mistake, it's more like stepping on somebody's toes. It's something that just happens, walking down the street, if you walk like I do, and then you just say, you look the person in the eye and you say, like Dave did to Rich, sorry about that. I really did not intend for that. And if it was a subconscious thing, then I really need to apologize. That's all. That's all. Don't make it. Bottom line is, don't make it bigger than it is. And let yourself off the hook. Now on the other side of that, be a little bit careful. You don't want to be in that situation more often than absolutely necessary. But every now and again it happens, and just deal with it with like Dave's byword right there, with kindness, and you'll be okay. Trust me, you'll be okay.
Yeah. And a couple of last capstone thoughts on this. I really want to emphasize: the bigger you make it, the weirder it becomes. Brad makes an excellent point there. Yeah. If you're like, well, Brad, I'm so sorry. That was evil intent there. Brad is immediately going to go, wait a minute. Are you printing a shirts? What's happening? What's going on?
Exactly.
And then the second one is the bigger the moment of creativity, do take an extra beat. So, for example, if it's a daily installment of a comic, just draw it. I'm sure you're fine. No big deal. If you inadvertently plagiarized, well, then apologize, move on. The moments that you want to be a little more careful, the title of your comic, the main characters of your comic, the overall structure and arc and story thrust of your comic, and the themes of your comic. Like, you don't want to accidentally step on a Disney property from 1985 and get a letter from the good folks in Burbank, right? You don't want
get two letters. Those letters being C and D.
I need a little audio prompt that just goes ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba, and I need to. So Matt, we're gonna need to insert that after a lot of Dave and Brad jokes.
Yeah, you'll wear that button out.
Yeah. So basically, when it comes to starting a project, or titling a project, or naming your characters, that's where I would think Brad would go along with me and say, take a minute and just do a little research for your own benefit, because also it's helpful sometimes to see what is out there so that you can better differentiate your story. Or frankly, sometimes it just helps you look at your story in a new light and go, oh, you know what? The way I was structuring this is kind of hacky. This was done in the 80s and the 90s. Maybe I'll structure it this way. That's different. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I had a great moment on Twitter years ago where I was like, I really want to share this cartoon. I wasn't even sure whether I should work on it because I'm sure somebody has had this idea before. But I just had the idea, and sometimes, you get an idea like that, Dave, and it's like exercising a demon. You just got to put it down in pixels, because otherwise it's going to keep rattling around in your brain, and you just got to get it out. It's like more of an exorcism than anything else. And I said, I'm sure somebody's had this idea before. Lara D'Souza responds to me and says, so what? You're thinking of it now. Who cares if somebody thought of it before? You're thinking of it now. He says, let's see what Brad Geiger thinks. Let's see what Brad Geiger does with this idea. Who cares if it's done before? And that is something I've held with me forever. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do this, even if it's done before. I'm going to do it, and it'll be the most Brad Geiger interpretation of this idea that can be. And I shared it, and I was glad that I did. It got a lot of great response. But that phrase has always resonated with me. Who cares? Who cares if somebody's thought of it before? You're thinking of it now.
Yeah, and that, by the way, the thing that Brad is referencing is a short-lived comic title that he did called Shelton, and that had a little boy with his goose, and the boy had very large contacts in his eyes, and
in fact, that was usually the whole first week was just him putting in the left lens. It was I had a different idea of pacing than I do now.
That's right. Well, all right. Shall we move on to? Oh, you know what? Actually, Brad, the one thing you wanted to comment, and I forgot. I want to give you a chance to. This kind question asker had mentioned that he's been doodling, and I wanted to give you a chance to because you had some very strong thoughts about the word doodling when we pre-read this question.
Can I? If I have one wish for the new year, can I just make a wish for 2020?
Is it friendship? Please be friendship. Please be friendship.
No, listen, that boat has sailed a long time ago.
Dang it, all
right. Can we please get rid of the word doodling? I hate the word doodling with a freaking white hot passion. There is no time I've ever seen or heard the word doodling that it hasn't made me cringe. And I'll tell you why. Back in the day, when they used to talk, for example, about women talking, they would say, "Oh, look at those women. They're gabbing over there. They're just gab. They're gabbing." Men have conferences. They talk. They confer. They have discussions. They have a mind to mind, an eye to eye, a heart to heart, even. But women gab, and I always thought that was a really underhanded way to use language to dismiss somebody. To say, well, we're talking, but they're gabbing. And for the same way that I didn't think gabbing is being used in a nice way, I despise the word doodling. And I think it's a way that either others use that word to put down what we do, especially cartoonists. You know, fine artists, nobody would ever call them doodlers. But cartoonists get referred to as preparing a doodle all the time. And I think it's a way to try and make less of what we do, and I can't stand it. So please, let's get. Do you agree? We need to get rid of this word.
I do and I don't. I agree with you that the word doodling and doodle or doodler, they're all belittling. They're all like they all need the word little in front of them. Like, oh, look at your little doodle. Oh, look at you, your little doodler. You know, it's like if I looked at you, Brad, as a grown man and said, well, aren't you a little scoot dooder? Aren't you just a little...
You don't go to a grown man and ask him how his little doodle is doing.
Especially not Brad. Poor guy. He's so insecure about it.
That's right.
But for me,
break right down into tears.
Can I get academic for a second, actually? Because I actually think that cartooning is not doodling, and doodling is not cartooning. Doodling is a very specific set of hand action that is different than drawing. Drawing is an intentional mark making. Doodling is when you let the pen or the brush or the crayon flow across the paper without thinking about it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
It is the artist is semi-absent from the process in doodling. Doodling is like when you're on the phone and you're not even looking at what's being created on the page, you know? Whereas drawing is an intentional act. And that's why I think part of you responds to this as a belittling word, because A, you don't want to be called a little doodler, and also what you're doing is an intentional act. Like, granted, are we basically clowns? Yes, cartoonists are basically clowns, but in the same way that a comedian works on their craft and a clown works on their craft, a cartoonist works on their craft. So don't belittle the craft making, I guess is what you're saying. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. I think if we want respect as cartoonists, we have to start by giving it to ourselves.
Yeah, and I don't take as much umbrage as Brad does, and I don't say that there's no overtones of that. I'm just saying I don't. It doesn't bother me as much, but I see why Brad would get uppity about the word doodle or doodling or
Yeah, and I
doodler.
don't think that this person that wrote us the question is bad for using it, but I want to clue you into that to that aspect of that word, and to encourage you to use some other words, because I really do think there's a minimizing aspect of that word.
Yeah, and in fact, not to make a super callback, but it's the end of the year, so I might as well say our very first episode of ComicLab, we talked about this, about what nomenclature we use to describe ourselves. Are we an artist? Are we a cartoonist? Are we a caricaturist? Are we, there's a couple of different ways to describe what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, to Brad's point, it's worth thinking about the words that you use to describe yourself, because they can either be minimizing or they can be self-reinforcing in terms of the hard road sometimes you have as an artist. And so if you can use words that are kind to yourself, you stand a better chance of surviving the harder moments of being an artist, right, Brad?
Absolutely. The one time I ever accepted doodle, do you remember this? This is going to be a callback. Do you remember Box Jam's Doodle?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I oddly loved that comic.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was absolutely
delightful.
Beautiful. And it was very simplistic, very minimalist. But the writing was incredible. It was one of the really early standouts on Keen Space and then Keen Spot in the early 2000s. I don't even know if you can still find it out there, but
I don't know if you could.
That's the one time that I will accept the word doodle is in that respect. It just made me think of that, and how much joy that comic brought me day after day back in those early days of webcomics.
Yeah, we just dropped a reference that literally no one remembers. That's
no, maybe three people, three people out there. With liver spots on their wrists like ours. Well, on that unhappy note, let's go to another question before I start crying in my microphone over here.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we'll tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Oh, when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, no worries.
You can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Leave us a 5-star and a few kind words.
That, and along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, let's talk comics. Well, as 2019 draws to a close, we want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor for most of the end of the year here, Wacom, over at wacom.com. They have been a huge part of our art career and our business, frankly, in the last decade or more. So it really is the perfect sponsor for this show, a show about making comics and making a living from comics. That basically the main tool that we use day in and day out in our own studios is the sponsor of the show. It's kind of perfect, don't you think, Brad?
Yeah, it's and it's one of those things that we feel good about sharing with you folks, because it's something that Dave and I use all the time. In fact, we've got multiple tablets in both of our studios, and we've been using them for years. So it's something that we can feel absolutely thrilled in good conscience about sharing the information for the Wacom series with you at home.
Yep, absolutely. It's a joy-filled sponsorship because it is so kismetic. Is that a word, Brad? Kismetic? You can have something that's kismet. Can it be kismetic?
Kismetic, you know what? Kismetic sounds close to cosmetic, which is, it's got some great humor potential. If kismetic isn't a word, I say we make it a word. Like, what we do is we take doodle out of the dictionary, and in the space left over, we put kismetic.
You know what? I think that's great. I'm gonna email Merriam-Webster's today, and we're gonna get that going. But in the meantime, we want to thank Wacom at wacom.com for their sponsorship. And Bradley J. Geiger, what is our next question?
Here's one that comes in from one of our $5 Patreon backers, and it says this: I have my entire comic script written out, and I've had a few people beta read it, but haven't given me much feedback beyond "this is good." While it's appreciated, it's not giving me much more to improve on or telling me if there's any areas that need work. So I'm considering hiring an editor. Have either of you hired an editor? How does an editor compare to having beta readers, especially for webcomics? Is it worth it? For reference, my story is a long-form story that relies heavily on planning it out without any improv. So, Dave, what do you think? Have you ever hired an editor? And can you give this nice person some advice?
I have hired proofreaders multiple times. I have never hired an editor, no. And I'm
Right.
trying to think what it would require for me to hire an editor. And I'm thinking, wait, why are you laughing?
I'll tell you what it would require. For the same reason I don't hire an editor, it would require both of us working a whole lot more in advance than we do.
That's true. I was going to say it would require someone handing me $20,000 and saying, go hire an editor for a couple of months. That's what it would take.
Yeah, I don't know that it would be that expensive, but it would be an extra expense. But yeah, but for me, it would be just I'd have to work. I've got a lot of stuff planned out, but I don't have it planned out to the extent that I've got it written so much that an editor could look at it and make sense out of it.
Yeah, for context, Brad and I are ahead, but we are not ahead.
Right.
It's not ahead enough where an editor could take a thoughtful amount of time, look it over, can suggest storyline alterations, and then get it back to us, and we go, oh, that's really helpful, and then work it in.
Yeah.
We're kind of like, oh, God, this needs to go up, it needs to go up, and we're done. All right, next page, oh, God, it needs to go up, it needs to go up, and we're done. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, that describes just about every day of the week. There's something that needs to get up there. And it's like, okay, that's done. Okay, I'm okay for another 8 hours until tomorrow. I got to start pushing that boulder up the hill again.
Yeah, but I do want to address this sentiment that your friends or associates have given you, not you, Brad, but the question asker, that, hey, it's good, and that's it, right? That's the feedback. Hey, it's good is basically the friendly way of saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be involved. Don't involve me. Like, you're a great person. I like you. I don't want to be involved in any way in this editing process, so don't give this to me. Because that's, if a friend, even a dear friend like Brad says, hey, can you give me some thoughts about XYZ? If I don't really want to be involved, I'd say, hey, it's great. I give one note, maybe two, and then I'm out. I'm like, I'm out. There you go. Got to go.
Yeah.
Like, hey, on page 29, maybe consider changing that to an exclamation point from a period. Anyway, I've been helpful. Bye.
I did my part. I'm disappearing now.
I did my part for King and Country. Bye.
Well, it's so funny you mentioned that because yes, asking friends to do this, even if they say, "Oh, I'd love to do that," or even if maybe they suggested it, particularly if they were from the Midwest and suggested it, because they do things that they're expected to do anyway, right? It's a bit of an imposition to expect them to do much more than what Dave just described. Yeah, a little positive reinforcement, a couple of thoughts here and there on maybe some punctuation, and that's about it. And the fact of the matter is that for the same reason, sometimes people are like, well, why do you charge for comics consultations? This is something you could just sit down and do for a few minutes, and why do you charge? And there's a method and there's a philosophy behind this, other than the fact that my time has value, which is the headline on the page. But also, what I found is that when you're paying somebody for something like this, number one, they take it way more seriously than they would if they were just a friend doing a beta read. And number two, you listen to them with completely different ears than you would if this was a friend that's just giving you a beta read.
Right.
So putting some money on the table, making that a transactional situation, has a lot of benefit. On both sides, has a lot of benefit. You'll find that you listen to that person much better. So, in that respect, and by the way, you can go through Twitter, you can go on Reddit, you can go on a number of different social media platforms, and with just a few searches, you can find people who are A, well qualified, and B, advertising their services as comics editors. And I would have zero problems whatsoever suggesting that you contact one of these people, especially if it's something you feel you need. Contact one of these people, get in touch with them, establish a price that you're comfortable with, and go down that road. Absolutely, it would be great. But your instincts are right. Expecting friends and neighbors to do this through a beta read is bad because, number one, it's an imposition. Number two, they're not taking it very seriously. And number three, at the end of the day, you're not really taking them seriously.
Right. And there's a lot of Venn diagrams that have to work out for those friends to be helpful, good, and interested in what you're doing. So I have many people that I love in my life. Only a small percentage of them are interested in comics. Of those, only a small percentages would have even passably good editorial skills. And then of those, boy, I would be lucky if I found one that was interested in the same topic or story that I was telling in that comic, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I say that with love for all the people in my life. And by the way, the same thing I feel about their creative endeavors. I'm not necessarily great at giving my wife notes on TV episodes that she passes me because I don't love that format. You know what I mean? Like I love her output. I don't particularly love reading or editing a TV script. It's just not my wheelhouse. So anyway, what I'm getting at is Brad's on the right path. I would suggest going through and looking at the groupings of smaller publisher editors, because someone who's worked for Boom or IDW or I don't know, Slave Labor Graphics or whatever these smaller comics are, they will be affordable page rates for people that like yourself, an independent cartoonist. They have experience in working with comics, so they already check off one of those Venn diagrams. They're probably English majors or communications majors, and they know and understand and have interest in how a comic story should be structured. So,
Yes.
I would think if that's the way you're going to go, if you're going to try to hire somebody, and frankly, I always kind of keep a quiet tab in sort of a Machiavellian way when one of the smaller publishers has a lot of layoffs, because I always think to myself in the back of my mind, Brad, if I needed to hire a marketing person for a month or two, boy, it sure would be nice to hire them right out of being fired by a massive layoff of a comic book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, at a time when they really need you the most.
Yeah, because you're doing them a favor, and also you're getting someone who is, by any definition, a professional. It's just that their company screwed the pooch, and so they're out of work, you know? And so if they have big layoffs, then great. That's a great time to snatch somebody up. And might be true also with editors. So if Boom or IDW or Slave, I have no idea what any of their financial situations are, but if any of them have a massive layoff, you could be like, who was on the roster as of 2 days ago? Let's see. Okay, I'll send out emails to these 10 people.
Yeah.
Also, there are a lot of really good, talented working editors for these small companies that can also do work on the side, and that's totally legit, totally fine. And so you can email them on either publicly or on the DL and be like, "Hey, do you take side work for the weekends? Can I give you this for X amount of dollar a page or whatever?" That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's even though Brad and I have not done it, I think it's doable. I think if you come from a stronger art background than a writing background, it's probably advisable. And since really one of the key words that you used in your question was the fact that this was a long form story. And it's really hard to ask even the bestest friend or family member to be like, "Hi, here's a 400-page outline. What are you doing this month? Want to give me some notes?" You know, that kind of thing. Whereas to Brad's point about people's time being worth money, if you're paying someone, they will take a considerate and heartfelt look at your layout, your outline, whatever it is, and give you thoughtful notes. So anyway, best of luck with it. Again, though, I also think if you're looking for a career in cartooning, and this might sound colder than I intended to, but I think Brad and I would also encourage you to cultivate your ability to be your own editor.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
It's not a happy path if it's not your natural skill set, but in the same way that I had to cultivate my drawing skills to be passably okay from being passably terrible, you just have to get better at certain things, you know? And so that's option B, I think.
Oh, you were putting yourself down. That's as bad as doodling. You said you went from being passably okay to passably terrible. And you went, listen, Dave, I say this with love in my heart for you. You went from passably okay all the way up to so-so, and you know it.
Brad Geiger, ladies and gentlemen. I saw it coming a mile away.
You bet your boots I did.
I saw that joke coming up Main Street, and I let it happen. That was great.
All right, so Dave, we've got another question from a $5 Patreon backer, and
hit me,
I want to hear what you say to this. This
right.
comes from our friend George Mackay, who says, "Ach, aye, Dave and Brad. In building," I can't do the Scottish accent further than that. In building,
here's how you do. Wait, can I teach you how to do a Scottish accent?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
First, pour yourself one finger of whiskey. Right,
done.
That's step one. Step two, cultivate an intense hatred of the English. Right, that's step three. That's step two. Step three, in your downtime, try to invent a machine like a steam engine or something that processes wheat or cotton. And in so doing, you will develop a Scottish accent, Brad. It's an easy 3-step process that I've developed for doing.
Let me see if I can do that. I got the whiskey. I can generate
cultivate
hatred.
an intense hatred for the English. That's the second part.
All right, and now invent a machine.
Yep. So work on that steam engine. Okay, keep going.
Ach, Dave and Brad, in building your Patreon following and offering more.
All right, I'm going to stop you there. That was great. That was great, Brad. I'm going to stop you right there. I think everybody at home had real fun with that. That was delightful. So we're gonna pause you right there. That was a lot of fun. I think everybody enjoyed that. I speak for myself saying that was real fun for me. Anyway, you know what might be fun, though? Let's hear how this question from a Scottish question asker could be read in an American accent. Let's hear that, Brad. Let's try that out.
That's going to take more whiskey. In building your Patreon following and offering more and more exclusive content, do you risk alienating your fan base who have followed you on social media over the years and expect to see a good amount of free content? What do you think? Are there any tips on managing this expectation? Dave, what do you think? As we go more and more towards exclusive content, do you risk ticking off those Twitter followers and those people on Instagram?
Let me put it to you this way. That's $1 loss from someone who is never going to give you $1 anyway, if you look at it one way. Right? They were, I love you, Brad. I love all your free content. Oh, I've never bought a book, never once met you at a Comic-Con, never got a poster, never got a pin, never get back you on Patreon, never back to Kickstarter. Love that free content, though. Don't piss me off by putting exclusives behind a paywall.
Remember, this is exactly the person who says stuff like, "Oh, I'd back you on Patreon, but then I'd have to back 50 other people, so I just can't." That's who we're talking about here.
You don't want to lose me, Brad. I'm your best free reader. You don't want to send me out into the cold. I'm the one keeping the lights on at the Brad Geiger house with all my 0 cyber dollars that I'm sending you.
No, you're absolutely right. This is who we're talking about. People who listen, back in the day when webcomics were ad supported, those people who were just reading the comic had value. And I'm going to talk about people as having value now, and it's going to sound a little sleazy, but stick with me. I've got a point. Those people had value. As readers, they had value. They were generating ad dollars, and they were important for doing that. Also for reading your comic, of course. But as part of the business model, they were part of making that machine run. Now, since most, if not almost all of us have moved away from an ad system because of ad blockers and because of the implosion of web-based advertising in general, and have moved to crowdfunding, those people who follow you on social media still have a small amount of value in that their engagement helps to spread your message out even further. So they are not valueless, but they don't truly become valuable to the extent that you worry about what they think until they become a Kickstarter backer or a Patreon supporter or somebody that's buying your stuff on a website or on Amazon and so forth. You don't worry about what they think until they step up and become more engaged than just hitting the like button. Until then, you really, in fact, I am going to go one step further. You want those people to be pissed off. You want them to be good and pissed off. You want them to get to the point where they say, gosh darn it, he's posting all that stuff exclusively on Patreon and I'm not seeing it. The only way for me to see it is to become a Patreon backer. And that's the only way they're ever going to become a Patreon backer. Is if they get good and that's, by the way, that's the way I never say support me on Patreon. I say join us on Patreon. It's not about support. It's about I've got a party going on in there. Join us. Come on in. The only person stopping you from the party is you. Come on in and join us. It's a great time. That's my Patreon approach. I'm being totally serious about it. When I picture Patreon in my mind, it's a party.
Well, I want to tell you what you sounded like, though, because I don't think you realize the tone you're in. We're having a lot of fun in there. Join us. It's a party. Put on this party hat. I'm Brad Geiger. We're laughing and having fun.
God damn it, smile, you.
Are you kids ready to have fun at this pizza party? Here's your pizza. I'm Brad Geiger.
We're having fun, damn it. Stop your feet.
It was delightful because you were so worked up that you forgot what you were saying in terms of tone. Like, I want them to know how much fun I'm having on Patreon. Get in and join us. Join us. I don't say support me. I say join us. Have some fun. My feet hurt. I'm Brad Geiger. I've got an ingrown toenail. Join us. I'm having fun on Patreon. I'm Brad Geiger. Don't you like to laugh?
Don't you like to laugh? Oh, my God, that's too funny.
Where's your sense of joy, for God's sakes? Get in here. Join us on Patreon.
Well, the bottom line, I don't know that I can come back from that. The bottom line is not to put too fine a point on it. No, you don't worry about social media backers. They are there to be converted. And the only way you're going to convert them is to keep the stuff that they're interested in. I've said it before, 85% of my stuff that I create on a yearly basis is behind the Patreon wall. I've got a public comic that I do, and that is there almost in the same way as a supermarket does a loss leader, right? They put the bread on sale, so you come in and buy some bread and some milk. It's the same exact idea. I have a public-facing comic. I do a certain amount of public stuff. Everything else is for my Patreon backers. That public-facing comic draws them in. If they don't want to join us, that's fun. That's fine. They can stay outside in the rain where we're having fun inside here.
Look at everybody's got a small, reasonably sized cupcake. Come join us and have some fun. It's not particularly good frosting, but don't mind that. We're having fun in here. It's Patreon. Join us. I don't say support me. I say join us. We're having fun. I'm Brad Geiger. So... All right, now that I've driven that into the ground, I want to say this, though. I literally don't have a better capstone than Brad. Brad really put the best point on that one, so I'm going to leave it at Brad's point. But because, Brad, I think we've always prided ourselves, but ComicLab is a show about facts. It's a fact-based show. Like, when we say something, boy, it's true. And so I want everyone to know that while Brad was talking in a joy-filled tone, I was searching on Wikipedia about who invented the steam engine, because I thought it was a Scotsman. Turns out it was Thomas Savery of Devon, England, invented the first commercially used steamed engine. And I want everyone to go Google Thomas Savery because, honest to God, he has a face that looks like the living embodiment of, oh, hello. Yes, I've invented the steam engine. Hello. Do you have any tea? Oh my goodness, look what I've done. I've created a steam engine.
I had a little steam sitting around, and now I've made an engine. Pip, pip, cheerio.
Pip, pip, cheerio. Have a lovely day. I wish you all the best. I'm Thomas Savory. Yes, hello. Anyway, I'm not one of those dirty little Scotsmen from up north. Hello. I'm Thomas Savory. Yes, I invented the steam engine.
Oh, my
hello.
God. Oh,
anyway, come
hysterical.
join me on Patreon. We're having such fun.
I wondered where you were going with that building machinery thing, and I'm like, wheat and steam, and I'm like, maybe just a reference I didn't get, but you were going someplace with it. Well, I'm glad you went back and did that correction.
Well, because we're a fact. Wouldn't you agree, though, Brad? We're a fact-based show, and
the facts flow like water on this show.
Yeah, but if there's one thing you need to know is that Brad and Dave chock-a-block with facts. That's really...
Well, yeah, it's called ComicLab. The last three letters it's a scientific place of inquiry. It's all fact-based. It's not comic alter. We're not doing this on faith. This is ComicLab, where we are like two scientists of comics.
We are literally the physical embodiment of the scientific method, Brad and I. So we are, if you need to test a hypothesis, you bring it to Brad and I, because it's a lab around here. So we're, oh boy, that could not be further from the truth.
No. Well, listen, as you're struggling with the distruth of your statement, I've got a thought. This is coming from me. We just did that show not so long ago about Patreon Assembly, which we've gotten tremendous response from. I was really interested to see how people were gonna respond to that, and so far, as of the taping of this show, it hasn't gone public yet, but we've got a lot of great response from our Patreon backers who have joined us at our party, and I had one more thought from Patreon Assembly. You got time for it, Dave? Do you want to hear this?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead.
So one of the things they did on social media for Patreon Assembly is they had a bunch of these hashtags. One of those hashtag events where they said, tell us this and use this hashtag and share that and use that hashtag. And one of them was getting people to share the best advice that they had ever gotten and use a certain hashtag. Probably, I think, hashtag best advice I ever got type of deal, right? And as I was charting Patreon Assembly that day, just seeing if I was missing anything big or, whether I should have gone after all, that kind of thing, with my fear of missing out, my FOMO at full blast, I'm looking through these and I see these hashtags, and all of the advice that these people were saying was the best advice they'd ever gotten was all of these platitudes that were completely empty and vacant as far as I'm concerned. Stuff, in fact, stuff that I'm going to argue in a couple seconds here is downright dangerous. One of them was never give up. Don't ever give up. Keep plugging away. If you go back and look up this hashtag, you'll see some variant of never give up over and over and over again. Different words, same sentiment. And I am going to say, I'm not going to say, hey, maybe you should give up. I'm going to say we need to stop thinking about doing creativity and changing directions as giving up. Again, that's another thing where your words screw you up in the head, just like doodling. If you look at the idea of changing directions in your creative path, if you look at that like giving up, you're going to prevent yourself from making some really important decisions that could end up stagnating you for years, if not decades. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I mean. Just a week ago, this person slides into my DMs. That's what the kids are saying, Dave.
That's what we millennials like to say.
Yeah. This person slid into my DMs and he says, "Hey, Brad, you may not remember me, but and I'm paraphrasing here. He goes, back in the day, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, this person was a webcomics.com subscriber, and every now and again, I did like some critiques for subscribers of webcomics. ProTipsComics.com. And much different than a consultation. It would be, okay, we're going to talk about this and that, or we're going to talk about these certain issues. And he says, you gave me a critique, and my critiques are rough. my critiques are very, very frank. And he said, you gave me some really hard advice, and I kind of took it and adapted it. And he says, you made some really good points, and it made me rethink what I was doing. And he says, I went back and did comics for a little while longer, and then I realized this really isn't my full aptitude. My aptitude, he says, was not so much comics; it was video game design. And this was something I had a passion for too. And he goes, I took what I learned in comics and I brought that to video game design. And long story short, Dave, his Kickstarter just funded, I think he's got another 2 weeks to go. Kickstarter just funded for $20,000 and still going strong for this video game that it looks absolutely delightful. It looks like a game, and I'm not a big gamer, looks like a game that I would love to play. So I want to say, and by the way, if he would have done I'm serious. It looks like something I'd like to play.
I don't mean that.
Do I sound mean again?
No. What was something about the way you said that made me laugh, because you're like, I'm not a gamer, but this game looked delightful. All the little pixels, the lights, the sounds, bing, bong, boom. Oh, I gotta tell you, if I was into video games, those pixels would be intriguing to me. Anyway, I don't know what a video game is. I've been Brad Geiger. Bye. I gotta go. But now I say that out loud, I immediately feel guilty because I feel like I'm making fun of you too much today. So I'm going to stop talking and let you finish your wonderful thought, because you were in the middle of a great thought.
My thought is, if this person would have hashtag best advice I'd ever gotten, don't give up, hashtag never give up, hashtag always stick, he'd still be doing a comic that wasn't reaching its full potential. Instead, sometimes I'm telling you, you got to get the idea of giving up out of your brain. It's not giving up. You're changing directions. And if you take everything you learned about doing comics into this new thing you're going to do, whatever it is, I don't care if it's something that I might not even look at and think is very creative. It might be volunteering at a soup kitchen, right? I don't care what your new thing is. If you take what you learned in comics and take it to that new thing, you're going to do amazing things. You're going to do great, and that might not be your big success. You might have to change directions 3 or 4 times and take an amalgam of all these things you learned along the way. But if you take this hashtag never give up bullshit and let it direct your life, you're going to be stuck in that first phase of your development way longer, if not forever. And I think that hashtag don't give up stuff is dangerous. What do you think, Dave? Am I crazy?
Well, I you know what? Rather than focus on the Patreon assembly thing, I actually did want to focus on the phrase "don't give up," or "never give up," or "never give in," or any of that sort of stuff, because I think you really hit on something here, which is that there are no two bigger advocates for believing in yourself and stick-to-itiveness and hard work than Brad and I. Yeah, perseverance and stick-to-itiveness and believing in yourself, even when all the chips are down, right? Like, our careers are basically believing in ourselves when no one else did, and sticking to it and keeping our nose to the grindstone and all that sort of stuff. But the idea of never give up and never give in and don't stop drawing belies some certain truths that have to counterbalance that. One of them, and I think it's the most important to mention, is health.
Yes.
And I don't just mean physical health. I mean the people in your life. If not giving up or not taking into consideration the people that you love, the friends, your coworkers, the people in your day-to-day life, and frankly, even your own self-worth, if those aren't being kept in consideration as a counterbalance to never give up, well, then that's going to be a problem. You're going to have relationship problems. You're going to hurt the people that love you. You're going to hurt yourself. And so this is not, to Brad's point, a lot of things are a continuum. The idea of never give up exists in a spectrum of other choices that are also counterbalancing and counterweighing whether or not you should do a thing. So be kind to yourself and the people that love you, and not basically a sociopath of I'm never giving up,
Yeah.
with balancing it out as what does my family need? What does my friends need? What do
Right.
I need right now? What does my body require? Does my body require a break or working out or a mental health day or going to see a therapist? Or does my family need me to be there with them, time spent with them, genuine eye to eye time?
Yeah.
So that's point number one. Point number two is the idea of never give up also exists in a spectrum against the countervailing argument of your own internal editor and the editorial feedback that the world is giving you. Now, does that mean that you should always listen to the world? No, but to Brad's point, you should maybe not listen to a reader, but listen to your readers.
Yeah.
You should have a spectrum of consideration that you give to how does the world in the widest consideration look at my art? Are they liking it? Or is this concept working? Is this character working? And then also your own internal editor that you're slowly cultivating. Like, well, how are you feeling about it? Does this still strike you as red hot art that you're producing 3 years in, 5 years in, 10 years in? So I guess what I'm saying is, if you hold on to the thought of never give up, never give in, that's the thing that's driving me.
Right.
Well, that has to exist as in counterbalance with a lot of other ideas, many of which are trying to keep you healthy, happy, and well in this world. And so you should listen to those as well. Right, Brad?
Yeah. Well, and not only that, let's talk about this whole never give up thing. I originally parsed it as this idea of changing streams from comics to video games or something else, making a big change. It can also mean maybe this comic that you've been working on for several years, this title that you've been working on for several years just isn't getting traction. It's just not growing. It's not going anywhere. There may be a time when you need to take a look at that in a serious way and say, maybe it's time for me to create some new characters, to come up with a new theme, a new setting, a completely new title. Maybe it's time for me to change that too, because Dave and I can tell you, we know people from our 20-year history that are still trying to make that first comic that they ever dreamed up, still trying to make that work. And it's just not working. And it's time to say, you got that whole never give up thing is holding them back. It's like, okay, we've seen you do that. Let's see what happens if you do something else for a little while. Let's see put some steam behind that, right?
Right. And Brad, we have seen artists, friends of ours, who have latched into this never give up because the title became associated with their self-identity, right?
Right.
And so to Brad's point, sometimes just widening out your definition gives you the freedom to say, I'm not giving up, I'm just changing streams, So, for example, Brad could say, I can't give up on Greystone Inn. It's my title that I'm going to take to my grave. I'm going to make this work. Right. Whereas Brad could widen out his definition of never giving up and saying, I'm not giving up on being a cartoonist. I might be giving up on being the cartoonist of Greystone Inn, but now I am becoming the cartoonist of Evil Inc. I am still never giving up on being an artist, right? So, and depending on what your life needs and requires in that moment, your definition can broaden out to Brad's earlier story. I might need to give up on being a cartoonist, but I want to still be a creative person. I am not giving up on being a creative person. I will go do video games, right? And so you can rechannel whatever life is requiring of you at that moment. That if cartooning is not in the cards for you right now, maintain your creativity, maintain your outflow of ideas. Try to find a new stream for that energy to flow.
Yeah. And how many people do we know that have done that successfully and have brought tons of happiness into their life? We know a person that webcomics wasn't working so much for them or wasn't working to the degree that they had hoped it would, turned to writing novels and is tearing it up, writing novels, prose, right? We've seen this time and time again where somebody spun their wheels in one thing and then again, took what they learned. That is never wasted time. You learn stuff doing that. Took what they learned into something new, and I don't want to say they're making a go of it because we've pretty much trashed that phrase. But now they're pursuing a new path, and maybe that path again isn't going to take them. Maybe they're going to go through 3 of these, 4 of these. It's not about the. what I learned, the big thing I learned when I quit my day job to become a full-time cartoonist, it really got hammered home right between my eyes. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. I thought I had reached the destination. I thought that was it. They're going to roll the closing credits. I'm going to be happy. The end. My life is a freeze frame from now on. Nope. It wasn't that easy. It was a journey, and it got uphill real quick after that.
Right.
But that's just it. You're in it for the journey. You're not in it for the destination. And so take that journey where it leads you, even if it led you someplace you didn't think you were going.
Yes. And so a lot of people, I'm going to personalize this for a second. They might email me and be like, hey, are you giving up on Sheldon? Or, like, never give up. Don't give up on Sheldon. Right. And my attitude is I'm not giving up on Sheldon. It's just reducing an output because I'm giving myself permission to change my self-identity from the cartoonist of Sheldon, and that's it, to also being the cartoonist of Drive, and also being a podcaster that does ComicLab, and also making a new show with Fred Schroeder coming down the pipe in the 6 to 18 months. And also making a story book for kids called Your Life is a Line. So what I'm saying is I've changed my identity as a way of, quote, never giving up. I've just changed the definition of what I'm never giving up on, Yeah. And I think that's a healthier way to do it, frankly. And also, as Brad and I always say, be kind to yourself. If, like, for example, there's a new baby in your life or there's a health crisis in your life, that the idea of never give up also has to operate against the spectrum of your real life conditions. If your family desperately needs your day job right now for income to survive, give yourself the credit that you're not giving up on cartooning. You're helping your family, the people that you love, survive. It's okay to give yourself 3, 5, 10 years, and I know some cartoonists who they have actively put it on the shelf until their kids are out of college. Mm-hmm. And you know what? God bless them. If that's what they have to do, that's fine. We all have to. There are moments in life where we have to sacrifice, basically, but it's for the greater good of the people that they love, and that's okay. So if you're in a moment that your identity is struggling with I want to be the person that never gives up, I want to be the cartoonist, but you have a new baby, or there's a health crisis, or your parents are having trouble, or your kids are having health problems, or the friends in your life are having, a really dark moment in their life. Be there for them. It's okay to temporarily give yourself the permission to quote unquote give up for a second, for the greater good of the people in your life.
Yeah, and that's why I hated that hashtag. And by the way, it's never been a better time. First of all, 2 things. Number 1, go back, listen to that show we talked about where we titled it "The Creative Cocoon." That's everything you need to know about this subject. We talked about it at great length. Number 2, there's never been a better time for you to take a step back for a little while, whether it's a week or a month or a year. Again, go back to that idea of there's so much content. It's like your reader is sitting in front of a smorgasbord that has a conveyor belt attached to it. And there's all this content going across. If you take a step back for a little bit, I'm going to be honest with you. Even the best of us, even somebody operating at the top levels, they're not going to notice you're gone. They're not going to notice for quite a while that you're
That's
gone.
That's kind of true.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's very true. I mean, there's and there's a couple of us who might have very hardcore readers who notice, if I update 5 minutes late, they might send an email saying, "Hey, Brad, is everything okay over there? You usually update at 11:30, blah blah." There's a few people like that, and God love them. They're the ones that keep you going during the hard times. But for the most part, the core of your readership, if you skip a couple weeks or you skip a month, they're not going to notice. And they're going to be right there for you when you come back. It's going to be so easy to get them back because that kind of stuff spreads like wildfire. Hey, Kellett's coming back. Do you remember him? He's this he's this guy. He was really making a go of it there for a while.
I think but to Brad's point, I think I 100% co-sign on that, and I think he's right about that. It's to Brad's greater point too. It all operates within a continuum of your life, and we cannot say it enough. Be kind to yourself in infinite number of situations, and be kind to the people that are in your life. They are your support network, and so you want to when they need you. That's when you put people first in front of your cartooning. Right. And so it's okay in those moments to take frankly, a healthy attitude about what they need from you in that moment.
Absolutely. And one more thing, Dave, as long as we're talking about hashtag never give up, I am not going to give up on this episode, but I am going to give myself the creative shift to go over there and eat that turkey sandwich. So I'm going to say you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my delightful friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com, which you should absolutely go check out, and the cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com, which you equally should go check out.
And my good friend Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of the binge-worthy Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and the compelling and delightful Drive at drivecomic.com.
I could see you flipping through the thesaurus as you were like desperately like the compelling,
compelling and oh god, never give up,
compassionate. I don't know. God, go. Oh, get out the door! Get out the door! It's like when you get the kids to school in the morning. Out the door! Go! Catch that bus! Catch that bus!
You forget about lunch. You'll have lunch tomorrow.
Our sponsor, once again, and we give them huge thanks for rounding out the year with us, is Wacom, WACOM.com. And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode and all episodes was edited by the delightful Matt Woodard, who we send a huge thanks to the rounding out of the year for all his wonderful work on the show. He, of course, is of Woodsong Productions at www.woodsong.media.
Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So we're going to say that twice. Patreon.com/comiclab.
And you should join us on Comic Lab on Patreon!
Get over here! We're having a good time, can't you see?
Oh, look at all these small palm-sized cupcakes we've got for you! Oh, we're having so much fun! Oh, God!
That one over there has sprinkles on it. Do you see the goddamn sprinkles? I put sprinkles
They're
on
so
it.
joy-filled! Why aren't you smiling at our joy-filled cupcakes with the sprinkles on them?
Oh, that's it. I'm going home.
I think you just had an aneurysm.